One of the great things about Android is that it supports a number of different devices. What I mean by that is there are numerous memory configurations available on numerous devices. In addition, it supports many different screen sizes, screen densities, and different CPUs. Now that's a great thing. However, it also is a double-edged sword. What I mean by that is it can provide great difficulty in testing. It's not very practical to obtain every device out there and test our application on them. So the next best thing would be the virtual device capabilities that we have with Android Studio. The Android virtual device allows us the ability to configure these variables such as memory, CPU, screen sizes, and density. So let's get started seeing how we can configure our own Android virtual device that we want to run on. The great thing about this is we can configure lots of these AVDs and then use them to test other applications in the future. The first thing we want to do is bring up the Android Virtual Device configuration screen. We can get to that by pressing this button here or by going to the Tools menu, Android, and then selecting the AVD Manager. The first time I'll go through this button. Now the AVD Manager displays the currently configured virtual devices we have. You'll see the Lollipop 7 that I configured at the top, the Nexus 10 below that, and 3 Nexus 5 configurations. You may also notice from the 3 Nexus 5 configurations at the bottom that they're not all the same. The last two appear the same, but the first two are definitely not. If you look at the size on disk, one is configured as 1 gigabyte, the other configured as 750 megs. You can also see that the screen resolution is visible, the API that the device is targeted for is visible, and the CPUs are available. These AVDs are configured to work on an Intel x86 chip. To the right, you'll see some actions. You can launch these AVDs by just selecting that button. I can edit these configurations with the pencil here, and I can do other things to that virtual device by selecting any option here, such as duplicate, wipe the data, show it on disk, view details, and delete. Right now, we would like to create a new virtual disk. To do so, there's a button to the left. We'll select that, and that gives us a choice of hardware that we want to configure for our new device. This new device, it's for a phone, and you can see the categories of devices off to the left. We have TV, phone, the Wear category, and tablet. Again, this is going to be for a phone, so I select phone. I'm concerned that my application is not going to run on a low-end phone from several years back. And the application that I am creating in this imaginary instance is for people that probably have not invested into the latest and greatest phone on the market. So I want to make sure my application will work on their devices. So I'm going to try to find something fairly old in this list. Maybe a 3.7-inch screen, 480 by 800 resolution. That's about where the bottom end of my targeted market is. So I will select that. I'll say next. This is where I can choose my API level. In this instance, since this is just a demonstration, I'm going to select one that's already downloaded, which is Lollipop. That's the API I have downloaded. I'll select next. And the name is this by default. I don't want to name it that. I'm going to name it Low End Lollipop. I have the option here to change the resolution. Now I think that's fine. 480 by 800 was my goal, so I will keep that. I could also change the Google API associated with that. However, I want to keep that also. I have the option to change the scaling. I'll just leave that at default auto. And for my emulated GPU, I'm going to uncheck use the host GPU just to give me some idea of where some of the hiccups might be. If I select advanced settings, I can choose if it has a back or front camera. I'll say use the emulated camera. The network speed is probably going to be quite slow. I'll say edge. The latency, again, will be edge. And the RAM, I'm hoping that they have at least 512. So this is a pretty low-end device at this point. So I will finish my configuration. Second on the list now is the low-end Lollipop device. You can see it's configured for a 650 megabyte size. You can see the resolution is 480 by 800, and that's our device. I can select this now and launch it to see what it looks like. The emulator is loading now. If we look at the background, you can see that this is loading. I'll even go ahead and close this window. There it is. By the way, a nice hotkey is Control F12 that changes your orientation from horizontal to vertical. Very handy when you're playing with these devices. Finally, our virtual device came up. I'll unlock it. Now that's our AVD. That's what we just built. Now that's how to create and configure an Android virtual device. So each time you have a new device available on the market, you can create your own device to emulate that and make sure that your application works well with it.